All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Anthony Onesto, and this is New York HR. I welcome you. My name is Anthony Onesto again. I am a HR professional. I've built HR, just a little something about myself. If this is your first time on the show, we are bringing a New York flavor to human resources, to video, to podcasting, whatever the hell you want to call this thing. And I want to introduce my partner in crime, my mensch. Is there such a word? I don't know. Steve Levy, who is evidently sponsored by Monster today. Steve,
if only we were. I'm Steve Levy. If you really want to find out about me, you'll Google me like everybody else does. Now that's about what it is. And mensch is good. You know. And next week I'm going to teach Anthony another Yiddish word.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's it. And so, and our guest today is Janine Truitt. Janine is. She's the Chief Innovations Officer over at Talent Think Innovations. She's also the Czarina of HR, and we'll get into a little bit of what that is. Janine, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you, and you're the fifth. I think this is our fifth, right, Steve?
It is our fifth episode. Listen, so. 1, 2, 3, 5.
This is our fifth episode of New York HR.
Wow, we are rolling. Bada bang, forget about it.
We are. You know, we just finished up with Claude Silver from VaynerMedia. That was really exciting, and we're excited to have.
That was awesome.
Janine is a New Yorker, and we're excited. So, Janine, tell us a little bit. You know, I know you know.
New York. She bleeds apple juice and blue. I know that's what she does. I know. True.
No idea what that means.
She knows what it means.
I don't either. But,
okay. Good.
Well, yeah. So we're starting with early life, or who I am now, where we want to go with this.
Well, if you're new to the show, Janine's new to the show, although she watched a couple of the episodes before she agreed, which is shocking that she's still here, but she agreed to this.
Especially listening to your shtick.
Yeah, my shtick, exactly. We're going to go through your background. We want to learn a little bit about you because we want to learn about what it is to be an HR or an innovations professional in New York.
Yeah, why you are the Czarina of HR.
Yeah, tell us
why. That's what we want to know. This is street HR.
Are you a New Yorker? Are you born and raised?
I am born and bred. I was actually born at Booth Memorial Hospital in Queens. So
Queens. Awesome.
Yeah, so I'm first generation, American. My parents are from the Caribbean, Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago, respectively. Respectively. And so we started off in Queens, and we lived in Jamaica Hills, and then we progressively moved further east. We moved to Long Island back in like '87 or so. And I grew up in West Hempstead, but it's actually known as a little cove called Lakeview. Within West Hempstead, but shares the same zip code. And
Hempstead Lake State Park.
Yes, right. That was my park, and not to bore you with the details of all of that, but I was kind of like a quiet, shy kid, and very much into my studies and that kind of thing. I always kind of had a penchant for science and the way people thought, like pretty early on. And when I left high school, my focus was to become a biochemist, which is something that a lot of people don't know, and so I've gotten into.
Why biochemistry?
I just love science, and I always had like advanced level classes. And 11th grade, I got inducted into the Intel program. I went to Malvern High School, and so I studied the mutagenesis of poliovirus. And just took a liking to how.
Right there. What the?
I mean, Janine, you use words. You use words with 4 syllables. Anthony's got to keep it to 3.
So plainly, really, what it means is just how poliovirus metabolizes in the body. That's basically how it is. How does it regenerate and that kind of thing. So anyway, I was part of that program, and I was kind of like a science geek, and I applied to all these different schools for science programs. I really never had an interest in HR like at that point. And so I got into Hofstra University as a biochem major.
Awesome.
Hofstra HU. And,
Dutch woman, baby.
after a few, yes, always. And as I started to get, the science was good. The calculus kicked my ass, quite frankly. I can say ass on this, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, you can say more than that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, I found myself at a crossroads of wondering, like, you know, how much did I want to torture myself any further with these college courses in math and such, and so I said, okay, I think I'm gonna change, and so I ended up changing over to psychology. I didn't want to be a business major. I was like, everybody's a business major. Everybody's an international business major. I didn't want to go into medicine or anything, and so for whatever reason, psychology just kind of spoke to me. And so I went into that, started to specialize in clinical psych, and then I realized I don't really want to diagnose people every day for the rest of my life. So I was really good at it, but like I just couldn't see myself doing that and being happy every day. And
Can you tell us what's wrong with Steve?
Oh, yeah, no, I'm still trying to figure it out. We've been friends for a good long while.
You need about 3 hours.
Hey, Anthony. So, one for Anthony. Ting. Okay, don't worry.
We're a New York show, but our friends would call you Wicked Smart, right? Like our friends in Boston. Jeez.
Smart, yeah.
Wicked
definitely.
Smart. All right. So now you're
yeah. So so I literally went through doing like this ridiculous paper for clinical psychology, doing research, and then realized I want to make this change. It's like, really, this is now like my 11th, no, about the end of my second year in college. And so I was looking at master's programs, and I remember speaking to the dean at Adelphi, our rival school in Garden City, and she said, you know what you need to get into? You need to look at industrial psychology. I was like, I've seen it. I have no idea what the hell that is. And she says, that thing is going to be so profitable in like the next 10 years, and it's going to be so needed. She's like, go into it now, you'll thank me later. And I ended up switching to industrial psych. I took one course, and the lady that taught the course was actually a consultant out there in the world, so she was like the best possible person for me, and that's when I kind of fell in love with the whole HR.
Hey, Janine, question. What year at Hofstra was this?
Oh, you're not supposed to ask that.
That's okay.
Come on. Anymore. This would have been 2002, 2003.
So you probably took personality with like Beth Raymond, I think it might have been?
No, Camila Shahani.
Okay.
Dr. Shahani. She's amazing. Okay. The woman was speaking about stuff that we're just talking about now, then. So,
okay.
Yeah.
It's just like HR. Takes about 15 years for things to come out.
Just about. So
now you're in industrial psych.
So now I'm in industrial psych, and I minor in philosophy and community health as well. And at that, keep in mind, all during school, I'm working at Winthrop Hospital in Mineola in medical records. And so that's like the start of my career in healthcare. But I love it. You know, it still seems like a dude. Well, I did. At that point, I still felt like, pretty optimistic about it. I still felt like we were doing some good. And so I had a focus on healthcare or some sort of science from that point on. So anyway, I ended up leaving Winthrop. They never paid enough for my liking, but loved it. So I moved on. I ended up working in medical records, and then I went on to be a buyer for the hospital and executive assistant to the materials management director. And from there, I left once I graduated, and I went to go work in staffing, which I was a scientific recruiter. So I basically recruited and consulted for pharma companies, CROs, the Pfizers of the world, that kind of thing. I hated staffing, hated it, left it 9 months later. And I can explain why that is. I mean, I didn't like applying a number to a person's head. And it was kind of, and now that I look back, it was against everything that I learned and everything I was trained in and everything I wanted to do with my work in terms of being an industrial psych. To apply a number to somebody and say they're worth this much to a company just never, it just rubbed me the wrong way. And so I had to get out. I clawed my way to get out. And then I went to go work in home care for Beata nurses. That was my next stint. And I was kind of a personnel coordinator recruit. So I was hired to be a personnel coordinator / recruiter, but it was the office I worked for was in such a disarray that I quickly rose to kind of running the office. I was the person, basically. It was just, we had home care nurses, HHAs, and companions, and we weren't making a ton of money, which didn't make headquarters happy, but it was just, we had nurses that were doing things that were putting us in Medicaid cases, and you know, people who were billing hours that shouldn't have been billing hours, and nobody knew how to handle this. There was no other higher HR person than me, the coordinator. So ultimately, it was the first time I had to step up and see what my HR chops were in a situation where I really had no previous experience doing half of the things that I was doing for them, but I just knew I had common sense. I had common sense.
Half of the, right? Half
it's
the jobs
never failed me.
Yeah.
It's never
did you bring
failed me.
The industrial psych into it at all? I mean, was there a connection there for you?
At that point, I think I was still in a place in my career where I was putting out fires. I guess I always was trying to apply it where I could, but there were so many fires at that point in my career in the companies that I was in that it was hard for me to focus anybody on, you know, the deeper meaning behind why people do what they do. You know, it was like I had nurses that were on cases that were, you know, popping people's wounds, you know, like with inanimate objects. And so I had to deal with, like, did you not go to nursing school? And did you not learn that that's not what we do? You know, I had HHAs that are like on cases and giving a diabetic patient, you know, cultural food that like they clearly should know the patient shouldn't have, running up their like high blood pressure. So I had to have those discussions, you know. So there was just so much compliance on my head, so much compliance that I had to go. And it was an office that was dying pretty quickly. And so what happened was the one person that I did get along with was a staffing supervisor, and she was leaving. And so now I'm like, oh my God, like, what do I do? The one person I've come to rely on is leaving me. And so long story short, she ended up snagging me to the company she went to. They were looking for somebody to change their whole thing around, and there was a little bit more for me to do in the way of the industrial psych. And it was closer to home, win-win. So
right, exactly.
Ended up leaving Beata, but I stayed on, funny enough, as a proofreader and editor for their Spanish in-services. So among all the things that we ended up doing there, they had this thing where they had in-services that they were serving to their Spanish-speaking employees.
I have to say, we lost Steve, and the IQ of the room just...
Shut up.
And that's primarily because Janine's here, okay?
I'm not accounting for any
I mean, realizing you know, Tony, if your IQ was 2 points higher, you'd be a tomato. So come on, man. Let's keep this in that perspective, okay? Yo.
That's a hell of an accent, Levy. Whoa.
Bada bing. So it's fake Long Island. That's what it is.
I don't have to fake Long Island if you want me to. I can give you a real good balls to the wall Long Island.
So, all right. So now your boss moves, brings you with him.
So my boss moves, brings me with her. We go to a company who ran the emergency departments and hospitalist departments in hospitals.
Ooh.
So we were we managed those departments, even though we weren't necessarily part of the hospital. We just managed that one department, and so we hired the PAs and doctors and whomever else, and we did that nationally.
Is this company in New York? This is a company.
Yes, they're in Hauppauge. Well, they were in Hauppauge last I checked.
In Hauppauge, which sounds like a magical place, is where?
No, it's not a magical place. It's not really a magical place.
No, it's not a magical place. It sounds like a magical place.
You know, you can tell here on Long Island, so many towns have bastardized names of Indian tribes.
Yeah, it sounds like New Jersey.
Yeah, pretty much.
So what are some of the challenges you saw? So now you're in this new role. You're hiring all these folks. It's a challenging space. I would imagine there's a talent shortage. What year is this?
This is you really.
Well, we know it was before Crookhaven.
I want to say well, yeah, it was for, oh, you're going to get me in trouble. 2006.
Okay.
I'm going by I'm going by the birth of my children. You know, I have to do that. You kind of start to do that when you have kids. So yeah.
Little moments in your life, sure.
Right. Yeah. So 2006.
So I'm assuming there's a shortage of talent there. It's hard to find folks. Like, so how did you get past some of that?
So it was extremely hard to find them. We did this nationally in some very rural areas too. And our compensation wasn't exactly leading the market, let's just say, in terms of where our competitors were. So, triple whammy. I really am the kind of person, and I've been in recruiting for a while, like I roll my sleeves up and I find people. Don't ask me how, but I master sourced people.
How?
And I think the piece is that, at that time, there was no such thing. I mean, there was such thing, but nobody was using social media or any of these things that make it
Plaxo,
easier.
I think. Remember
right?
Plaxo? Was it Plaxo back then?
Right. So
2001, yeah. Probably LinkedIn just starting. There was Plaxo.
Relationships. It's all about relationships, and I used to just call up people, and I used to treat them with respect and treat their time with respect. And I was always honest. I feel like the honesty always helped me get people. When you tell people, sell them on a story, and they get in and find something different, you shoot your reputation down in the foot. It's over. So I used to just tell them flat out, like, listen, I have a great opportunity. It's a great hospital. I sold them on the facilities. The facilities were always great. I said, we're not, leading in compensation, so we're not going to be able to pay you a ton, but these are some other ways you'll benefit from them.
Cool.
Sometimes it works. Sometimes, a lot of times it works. Sometimes it didn't. Yeah, and so I had a good run with them in terms of getting them some good doctors. We had some bigger problems as a company. We ran into some cash flow issues, which I hadn't even known what that word was. I'm not a financial person until I worked for that company. But when you had to be on
you get a paycheck call. And then you learn quickly.
Well, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. Thankfully, it wasn't me. But we had to rotate being on call.
Right.
And when we were on call, what happened was you would have doctors calling in. There would be doctors that didn't show up to a facility in, say, like Georgia, and you had to figure that out. And so there were a few times I was on call, and doctors were calling me from Europe, saying they hadn't gotten paid, and they have no money to do anything.
And when doctors don't get paid. Ooh.
Not good.
So it took a few times of it happening for me to realize, like, oh, you guys are rotating how you pay people. And then it finally came out, like, oh, well, yeah, we're going to pay these facilities this week and these facilities next week. And it was just crazy.
We're doing that.
Yeah, it was nuts. And,
wow.
And I seem to have been the only person in there that had any HR acumen, because we were getting ready to lose a bunch of accounts to just simply compensation. And they were easy fixes in some of our regions. And I'm like, we just do a compensation survey. I'm like, just let me talk to them and let me run some market analysis and let me talk to administration, see what I can do. And I saved them at least 2 facilities as a result of doing it. And we saved our doctors. In one facility in West Virginia, all of our doctors were walking out of our emergency department. We were getting ready to go on diversion to our competitor. Oof. And it all was saved as a result of a simple, it wasn't anything fancy. I just went and did some market analysis, wrote up a report, and said, here's where we are, here's where we should be, here's some suggestions.
Either raise the salary or, you will see our revenues drop precipitously.
Correct. It's that simple. So, after dealing with, like, years of the cash flow stuff, and then now being pregnant and also getting married, I said, yeah, this is not the kind of stress I want in my life anymore. So let me get out. And so I was 6 months pregnant, and I went back out looking for work, and somebody snagged me up 6 months pregnant. Shockingly,
Nice.
Like, I mean, we know that, like, they're not supposed to discriminate, but, like, we all know what really goes on. So I was dubious as to whether I was going to get a job.
Sure.
But I ended up going to North Shore LIJ, now known as Northwell Health, I believe it is.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And what were you doing for them?
Well, actually, I took a step back. Like I said, I was 6 months pregnant, so I became an HR coordinator for talent acquisition. Thinking, like, you know what, I can use the break. I can put my brain to rest, because my brain's been going a mile a minute for all these years now.
So you're saying is it's less intellectually taxing to be in HR than it is to be in recruiting?
No, she's an HR coordinator for.
No.
I listen to the story, Steve.
No, I'm following the story.
Yeah.
I know True, man. I know True.
So, well, you know, no, it was a role that didn't require me to do other people's jobs, essentially.
You see, Anthony, HR, you know, that's why That's why Anthony isn't running recruiting.
Yeah,
this is all simple as that. By the way, Northwell, Northwell, Janine, they've got a pretty good recruiting department, TA department right now. And there's some folks there. I'm pretty sure you know.
Don't agree. I just saw the facial expression.
No.
Okay,
I know.
No. Let me be fair, because I'm making.
Here we go. This is where I love this show. We're gonna get real right now. Here we go.
Let me be fair. I know who runs TA.
This is not new.
I know who runs.
So I know the person who runs TA, and I'll tell you how I know the person that runs
TA. They're
TA.
listening.
You probably know the story. You know, I know her because she is the person that saved me from North Shore.
I know that
and
too.
She is the one, and she's the one that got me to Brookhaven National Lab. So she was my savior.
And you know, I know that.
Give her some respect.
So I give her some respect. I honestly do not know what kind of shop she's running. I can tell you that when I worked there, however,
I know that.
It was a cesspool. It was a cesspool, and I
suspected. What do you mean by that? Like, what was so bad about it?
If somebody walked in, if a recruiter, HR coordinator, whomever, walked into that department today, they were 100% guaranteed not to make it past 9 months.
Wow.
In the time that I was there for 2 years, and in the 2 years, I saw colleagues of mine carried out on stretchers, heart palpitations, ulcers.
Wow.
I myself had health issues towards the end there. It's a cesspool.
Wow.
No, it is.
The deal is this. I was part of their core management program at one point, so I was on a team that was working closely with the C-suite, specifically Michael Dowling. He's a very nice guy, and when you hear him speak, you would never think that the stuff that goes on there, but it is.
So if we could spin it now, what would you do differently there? Like so now I'm the head of TA.
So I'll tell you what it is. So the fact that TA is centralized there has always been an issue. So there's central TA right there in Lake Success. They're responsible for every single one of the facilities. So at this time, we only mostly had hospitals. We were just on the verge of acquiring all these physician practices that everybody sees springing up all over the place. We hadn't yet acquired Lenox. We hadn't yet acquired Staten Island. We were on the heels of that. They are using New York essentially.
By the way, not to mention all the regional hospitals on Long Island, Anthony, that are affiliated with them now.
So let's bring it somewhat current, and I'll give some suggestions. My stick with them back then was we weren't doing enough workforce planning. They have basically used the tri-state area as a monopoly board. What can I buy up? What more can I buy up? And on some level, that may be smart business, but it's not smart business if you haven't first stopped to consider how you're going to staff those facilities. So for instance, you have a centralized TA department with maybe 10 to 15 TA recruiters responsible for both union and non-union for 40 plus facilities. I can't tell you what the requisition. My requisition load at one point was almost shy of 200 requisitions I had open on my desk.
200 for one recruiter.
200.
And we're talking about what kind of roles?
Everything from director of radiology to the weekly PCAs that I had to test that needed to go to all the unionized
theoretically
facilities.
Easier to hire, but then there were complex ones, so it wasn't even.
Yeah, but the PCAs, so consider the bulk. PCAs, we were constantly turning over PCAs because we were $11.99 at LIJ and several other hospitals. So every time somebody gets promoted, you need another PCA.
Yep.
And more PCAs.
For the contract.
We had to be testing PCAs, which took time. You had to take time out of your day to test them. Oh, but you're supposed to be looking at requisitions
and you're
too. Don't let those
one of
fall
the
behind.
Most competitive marketplaces for these type of roles in the country. I mean, I would imagine in New York.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, wait, let me add to that. And then you have the VIP hire list that comes down from Michael Dowling's office with people he's met along his walks who he says you must hire because I say so.
Well, I can tell you with a level of certainty that's not just indicative in healthcare. It's every organization.
It's every
that kind of thing.
Right.
I met this person on a plane. You should interview them. It was never like you have to hire, but they definitely got a resume on top of the pile, so to speak.
Right. Except it becomes a lot more contentious when you are a federal contractor and OFCCP descends on you and you're finally finding your file is one of the ones that gets pulled, and now you find yourself in an audit with general counsel and all your superiors who asked you to make a hire, and they're all looking at you like, why did you do that?
Mm-hmm. And that's where the
kind of changes your flavor for HR.
Yeah.
Well,
so now,
yeah, except
let's now fast forward. Where are you? What are you doing today? So that you have all this experience, industrial psych, maybe some biology with a couple of words I had no idea what they meant. Now you've got the healthcare system, which I imagine the biology kind of helped a little bit when you're talking with recruits and things like that, especially doctors.
So the biochemistry and the experience I had early on in staffing, I didn't realize would come back and help me tremendously, because where I ended up after North Shore was Brookhaven National Lab, and that's nothing but R&D and scientists. So when they brought me in, they thought it was a whole new world for me. And so it was this kind of thing of, well, we're very niche and we're very boutique, and I was at home.
And you can't possibly understand what we do.
Yeah, I was at home because I knew how scientists think. I knew that they were passionate about their work. I knew they were passionate about their research, and when they couldn't reach them, I always could reach them, because I would just go see them and say, tell me about what you're studying. I want to hear about it. And I understood them.
So Janine, what was it like? What was it like working in here working at the labs? Which, if people don't know Brookhaven National Labs, it's one of the 7 national labs run by Battelle Corporation, where some of the coolest stuff in R&D, DOE is done. It's this big block of, you can't get in there, in the middle of Long Island.
Yep. It's got its own town called Upton, actually, but
no kidding.
So,
yeah.
You know, I went there thinking, oh, laid back atmosphere, this should be better. No more 200 requisitions and such, and you know, so literally, I went, to put it in perspective, I went from having like 175 active recs to having 20 to 30 at any time.
Vacation time.
So big fish, small pond is what I was thinking, and so it wasn't hard for me to succeed in the role that I was in. I was a senior HR rep. It wasn't hard at all, because I've been pushed to the nth extent as a recruiter, as a talent acquisition professional. So and yes, the roles were lesser, and they were somewhat more complex, but once you've recruited, recruitment is recruitment. A lot of what I ended up having to do there was more aligned with the industrial psych aspect of what I do, because they had TA there was a disconnect between what they knew they wanted to do and what they could get the scientists to do. The scientists had no respect for HR whatsoever. They were running them into the ground, and I knew from all of my travels that you couldn't just sit behind a desk and send emails all day and be successful. So immediately I just got out there and started meeting with people. I'd go spend 2 hours and say, hey, take me around the facility, show me your new nanomaterials, whatever, take me to the light source, show me the new light source.
So you would suggest to folks that are listening that your first, especially in a highly complex environment like that, or even technology, is to really learn the business, go into where these people are sitting, their daily lives.
You have to meet them.
Immerse yourself into their life.
You have to meet them where they are. You have to meet them where they are. These are not people that care about the rules for the sake of rules. They care about their research more than they care about themselves. And if you can show interest in what they're doing and also explain to them in basic terms how you can help them meet their objectives while also meeting your own objectives, you will never fail. And so they give me these really so-called difficult people. They weren't difficult at all because I got them and I understood. And I would say to them, like, look, I get that you have this scientist you went to school with and you want to hire him. I'm going to get you that guy if that's the best guy for it. I just need you to have a competitive slate. Let me find you some other good people. And we look at all of them and then we get to the promised land.
Now,
done and done.
Historically, there's always this contentious relationship between the recruiter and the hiring manager. It's you know, it's sort of oil and more oil or water, whatever. What do you think? Like, how do you solve for that? Because you would imagine we've been doing this all collectively, the three of us, you know, decade and a half, still exists today.
Just a decade and a half.
Contention, like. How do we solve for that other than going into their businesses, understanding what they do? What are some other pointers that you have there where we can solve some of this? Because it still exists today. I mean, Steve, I don't know your experience. You're dealing with this on a daily basis, but
well, you know, True knows this. So you don't ask me. She knows. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think so. One of the main issues that has always caused those rifts is not having a strong TA manager or TA director. If I think back retrospectively about the instances in which I had hiring managers who wanted to be anarchists and just do whatever they wanted to do, it was because there were no expectations set and or I had a TA manager or a TA whomever who didn't have enough chutzpah to set some expectations and say this is what needs to happen.
And by the way, for the flyover states, what we do, Janine, is we pause when we hear a New York word like chutzpah, and Steve or you can define it for the flyover states. What is chutzpah?
Janine, I want to hear what you say. You know what I'll say.
I mean, basically, without a lack of better words, it's having some damn balls. I mean, basically.
Tweet it out. Some damn balls. I love it.
In honor of NAFTA, I was going to say cojones, but I don't know if Anthony would have appreciated that.
Make it plain. Make it plain. So, you know, I think, and I mean, that's not something a recruiter can solve for, but I can tell you this. When I did have managers, supervisors who were not as strong as maybe I would have been in their role. I've led from where I was and coached them upward. So I mean, there's a certain semblance of the recruiters having to have enough ball and courage to say to their supervisors, here's what I'm seeing. I'd like to have a discussion with you about it. Here's how I think it can be made better. You're not going to always get the ideal manager or supervisor, and I surely have not had those opportunities to have such a person, but I've coached my supervisors and managers from where I sat to say, here's what I'm seeing, here's what I'm hearing, here's what I think could happen. Yeah. Do I have your blessing? You know, what do I need to do to get this to the next level? I just find, and I know, I'm sure there are recruiters out there that may do this, but there's not enough. There's not enough.
You know, the irony, Janine, is this coming SourceCon at next month. I'm doing one of the keynotes, and it's going to be on courage and leadership in sourcing.
Boring. Have balls. It should be
No,
titled.
I'm going to have a quote. Czarina of HR, show some balls. And maybe it's like,
I mean, don't show them, but have them. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That would be
New
bad.
York HR. Absolutely. I love it.
I mean, you know that the other piece of it is that taking that position, in hindsight, is a double-edged sword, right? So on one hand, you are kind of contributing to organizational effectiveness through your role, but the double-edged sword of it is that your supervisor may not appreciate it, which now spells issues for you. So you have to be able to shoulder that and understand that that's what you're walking into.
And it's an incredibly important part. I mean, and point. You know, I know we're joking about the balls comment, but you're so absolutely true, because I've seen so many relationships where hiring managers, which frankly have the leverage in these relationships, right? They are the client.
Well, presumably they have the leverage in the relationship.
And so if you don't have that supervisor, if you don't have that TA director that's been able to set expectations or support or everything, I think it's absolutely critical. So we're bumping up almost on 45 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Anything? So all this experience
Anthony, let me kind of switch it a little bit.
Yeah, good.
Because you know, Janine and I have some good professional history, and you know, there are a few topics that are near and dear to our heart, and particularly in the context of New York HR. You know, Janine and I we've written and spoken about you know, the nexus between race relations, diversity, and HR. And so, you know, True, my question to you is, and again, we're bumping up against pizza and bagel time, but, you know, maybe we should have you on again, because this is too much fun, is when you think about, you know, New York HR and all its nuances, how does, you know, race relations, diversity, and inclusion fit into the scheme of the environment? What's done well, if anything? What's done really poorly? And is there some sort of direction that we can go to as a profession that's particularly poignant to the New York area? Is there something that we can do here to show other parts of the you know, the states on how to do a better job of true D&I, true relations, and how HR fits into that equation?
Well, you know that my sentiments is that we've not done enough. And actually, since you and I have spoken and done some of the things that we've done, I've kind of evolved in my thinking some more, where I'm in a place now where I'm questioning why diversity and inclusion even exists, right? So if you take it from a base premise of why diversity and inclusion exists, it's because certain groups in this country have been marginalized for whatever reason, right? Systems have done this. And so dealing with that, basically we decided we're going to put another layer. We're going to become diversity and inclusion. We're going to make sure everybody gets treated equitably, except, you know, I've worked in that space long enough to know that that's not exactly true. So what happens is we have an affirmative action plan. We know where our availability numbers are. We know who needs to be hired, who we're lacking in terms of making it a more colorful spectrum. And so we'll hire a few. And then we stop. And we hire our friends from the country club. And we hire a friend from Rite Aid, or a friend that just lost her job and we feel bad, who does not at all mirror what society looks like, let's just say, right? And so, you know, oftentimes I'm hearing now, well, you know, affirmative action, it's a quota system. No, it's treated like a quota system. And I think that we have to, I think we can get rid of D&I and start with a premise of, I own a company, and in this company, I want my company to look like what society looks like. And in that society and in that ecosystem, I want people at every level to be treated fairly and equitably. And I think if you start with that premise, there's absolutely no reason for affirmative action. There's absolutely no reason for D&I practices, because all it is putting a Band-Aid on a bigger issue.
Yeah. So how does and then maybe we could probably get to the bagel and pizza question.
No, this is good.
This is good. How does, you know, Anthony and I tend to joke around our you know, the New York City area infrastructure, and I say it's so blessed fragile that it's one of our largest barriers to being able to, you know, attract and retain talent. But that also extends to the local governments. You know, are our local governments, and not just, you know, de Blasio in New York City, and not just the county executives on Long Island or the local hamlets like, you know, Brookhaven, are they do they get it? Are they missing something? Are we missing something between that nexus between government and business that we should be doing a heck of a lot better rather than not doing anything at all?
The solutions to most of what we see playing out are simple. Nobody wants to fix it, because if they fix it, there's going to be some losers, and the people who are going to end up being the losers are not typically used to being the losers, if you get where I'm coming from, right?
Oh, I do. Oh, yeah.
So they, you know, all of it is fixable, but nobody really, if we level the playing ground, we eliminate jobs. There are too many jobs right now.
Yeah.
They're literally the red tape that's keeping us back from fixing things in a meaningful manner. So
Sure.
let's keep a certain amount of people down so we can keep diversity and inclusion and keep making it seem like we're doing stuff to fix it, right? Because that keeps the people happy. We are failing ourselves because we've put too much faith in those people, right? And I'm waiting for the day that we all awaken and realize, like, we're literally running around in circles. We are in New York. Comparative to other places in the country, we are overworked, overextended, and it shows. It shows in how we operate with one another. It shows in how we operate on the job. And then we walk into companies who claim that they care about how that is for us, but they really don't, because they really could make it better for us for like all of the 8 to 12 hours we spend with them every week. But do they really? So we continue to talk about things like engagement. We continue to talk about things about, you know, like how morale is and how we can fix that, and we'll write it up in HBR until our eyes bleed. But we never take the actual steps to change it. And so to bring it full circle, Talent Think Innovations for me is me doing that. That's my mission, is to work with companies that get it, that stumble upon like this reality at some point and say, I can't do this anymore. There's a better way of doing it. And I trust where Janine has been and what she's seen to come in and consult me on better ways of doing this, real ways, not so much better, because we focus a lot on best practices and it's nauseating to me, but really like the real way. How do we genuinely take better steps to a sustainable business? And that's really what Talent Think's about. I mean, workforce planning, digital transformation, whatever, it sounds cute, but that's the heart of like what I'm after, and that's like where the career that I've had has led me.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I loved it. I'm in awe. Just I didn't even interrupt, and I typically would. So
you do,
I think you're absolutely right. I think, you know, there's two reasons in my perspective. One is I don't think we go early enough to really encourage folks in school, in grade schools, in high schools, and things like that. So I think companies need to own that. I think we've let the education system sort of take its own course, and I think corporations need to get. I mean, some are doing this, some are bringing the internships down to high school levels and other things, but I think we have to go way, way, way earlier to encourage kids that these are opportunities that they have. And then secondly, we've always approached this from a social good perspective, which obviously is interesting, but doesn't really get people to act. And, you know, the more studies that we show, a diverse workforce is actually positive business impact, then that's how we're going to be able to force this in. This is how, when we show people actually it's going to impact shareholder value. It's going to impact your top and bottom lines. That's the way we're going to have to. We were going at it more from a social impact perspective than we have from a business perspective. And then there's a lot of reports that are out now, or a couple of reports that actually show that having a workforce that looks like where you are and looks like America and looks like it actually has a positive business impact, because you're bringing, and I'm not just talking about skin color or it's where you're from, right? It's all these, it's diversity across the board, right? So it's absolutely, and in the business that I'm in, where I'm in digital, innovation, it's absolutely critical that we have a diverse room talking with clients. So I absolutely agree. I love what you said, and I think hopefully we're starting to see some of the change around there. There's a lot of discussion around these things. Like, people are talking about actually eliminating their D&I or their chief diversity officers, which may not be, we tend to sort of pendulum to one way or another and never sort of incrementally get there, except in HR.
Well, generally,
we're a best practices industry. So I can't tell you how many times I've been in organizations.
It's crazy.
What did Mercer say? What did Fortune say? And it's like, it doesn't matter. It's about what's best for your company. So that's a tip for anybody.
Who says Mercer's doing it right, or Mercer's clients? I mean, if they were doing, wouldn't need Mercer if they were doing it right? Like, so there's best practices are worst practices.
Well, the irony is, the concept of, once something becomes a best practice, it no longer is a best practice.
Correct. Right.
It's I think generally speaking, and this is not just politicians. This is and most everyone in business. This is the middle 68% of the normal curve, the plus or minus 1 standard deviation. People get so used to and so comfortable and so focused on keeping their jobs that they forget to do their jobs.
Yeah.
And
I have no idea what that means.
Yes, you do. Come on, get another cup of coffee. You'll figure it out, Tony.
So I can give an example to what he's saying. So for instance, when I did work for Brookhaven, I mean, they have probably some of the longest tenured employees anywhere. I mean, that you had people that were working there upwards of 35, 40 years. When you really got down to looking at what their actual contribution to the organization is, all you really found, I mean, there were some great people, don't get me wrong, but you found a lot of people who were just hoarding work. I had a project where I was trying to roll out a new ATS system, system-wide, and I literally had one manager. I needed her. Oh, I know what it was. I was trying to automate the onboarding piece.
I remember
the manager, this. She was doing the onboarding with like an Excel spreadsheet, and she managed the process. And she got so angry, so up in arms, that I wanted to do a phase 2 onboarding with this system, because she had it under control, even though it really wasn't under control and it was antiquated as hell. But she had to have it because it was her job. So on some level, there's a lot of people who are afraid of seeing the innovation that we're on the heels of, and/or the innovation of present, and they are grasping onto and holding on for dear life for what they've been doing, thinking that there's no other evolution left for them.
Yeah, I think we're
very short-sighted, by the way. It's very short-sighted, by the way, because there is other opportunity for you to be a contributor, but they don't yet realize it because they're so busy like this.
Yeah.
And that's where
hoarding all the acorns.
The funny thing, Janine, I think that's around the time you and I might have met. I remember that. But that's where HR has failed generally across the board. It's people it's on some level it's up to us to engender into the company a sense that I realize that you've been doing this for 30 years or 20 years or 10 years and it's really all you know, but we're going to show you how there's much more to you than just one Excel spreadsheet. We talk a really big old good game about engagement and taking care of our people, but we fail when it comes to people like that. We label them as being out of touch or the time has passed them by, and we give them a nice package. We buy. We're going to have someone do your resume. We don't do enough of that. We don't do enough to save people.
The problem is we don't speak in quantifiable terms. And that's been one of our deficits for a really long time. Like for me being an industrial psych background major, I understood very well what was bothering her. So we had to have some creative conversations about what that was and how she can continue to be a help in the role that she is. At the crux of that was just somebody that was fearful of losing their job to technology, right? And so you have a choice. I had a choice. I could either be dismissive and say, oh, you're just, you know, a relic on the shelf and this is where we're going with it, or I could use what was very innate to me and understand what her concerns might have been and meet her there and have some creative conversations about what that fear is.
Sure.
That's kind of where that industrial psych and all of that, understanding the psychology behind people, that's the beauty in it.
Very cool. I love how we circled back around to that. That's awesome.
So let's go. We could talk for an hour. I think we gotta have True. We're gonna have you on again.
Absolutely.
I just said
True Part 2. Part 2.
True 2. So
we're button up in
my bada bing boy. Bring it up.
We're almost out of time here, so we have to. You know, I promised folks 45 minutes, and we're always a little bit over, but. Good discussion.
We got diarrhea of the mouth. This is what happens here in New York, HR. You know.
Way to steer the taxi cab there, Steve. That was a good topic. So, lastly, what we do is because a lot of the viewers on our show are interested about New York, so they're not living here, but they're going to come and visit at some point. We ask every show participant, every guest, favorite pizza by the slice location, because in New York, no better food than pizza. What is your favorite?
So, since I'm from Long Island, I have to talk about Long Island. Uncle Giuseppe's right here in Port Jeff Station is amazing. Amazing.
Uncle
Giuseppe's, and I've got to plug another one too. So for me, it's either Uncle Giuseppe's or it's Pie Napolitana. Now, Pie Napolitana is in the physical town of Port Jefferson, but and it's more of a rustic. So if you like rustic pizza, kind of like old time kind of thing, then Pie Napolitana. If you just want a really good New York slice, Uncle Giuseppe's.
Uncle Giuseppe's, fantastic.
What about bagels? You know, Long Island is the home of bagels. Long Island's bagels. Do you like bagels? True. You can say no.
I do. It escapes me the place I'm thinking of, but anyway, there is a hot. I don't even think it has a name. It's literally like a hole in the wall. It's hot bagels, and it's on Montauk Highway in Bayport. And I lived in Bayport when I first moved to Suffolk. When those things just come out the oven, oh my God!
I know, true. I know where that is.
Unbelievable.
It's a really big store. It's a really big shop.
It's a big shop, but it looks like a little shanty house almost.
Yeah, but when you're driving east, it's on the right side.
Correct. Yes.
I know that place. I know that.
Oh my gosh, phenomenal.
Amazing.
None better.
Hey, one more place. Janine, do you have a favorite place for breakfast? Any place at all? Toast.
Port Jeff.
Where is Toast in Port Jeff?
Jefferson, my town. Oh my gosh, it is amazing. Like, if you do nothing else, forget the Hamptons. Come to Port Jeff. We're on the water. We're a beautiful town, and Toast is like a little coffee shop. They have freshly squeezed orange juice, all these like exotic kinds of pancakes. They're huge.
They have crab.
Probably eat like one.
Omelets.
Nice.
It's amazing. You have to come to Toast.
Toast. All right. So if I learned anything, have balls is one.
Yes.
Right? Industrial psych, very important background within HR and recruiting. Maybe even biology, although I don't know if I would encourage anyone. That's, you know, a lot of big words. Uncle Giuseppe's, very good pizza by the slice, and Toast. In Port Jefferson is a place to go for breakfast.
Don't forget Pie Napolitana. Don't forget Pie Napolitana.
So Janine, thank you so much. Where can people find you if they want to reach out and and pick into your brain about all these things and maybe even hire you to work for their company, where can they reach you?
So you can find me at my website, obviously, talentthinkinnovations.com. I blog weekly at the Aristocracy of HR, so you can find out more of my musings and the way that I think at thearistocracyofhr.com. And I also have a weekly live stream show that'll be back on the 14th of September called Ask Zarina Live. So you can find me on Periscope every Thursday at 11 p.m.
And on Twitter, where are you, Zarina of HR?
On Twitter, I'm at Zarina of HR. I'm actually at Zarina of HR on all the platforms. I'm on Instagram. I'm everywhere.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate you being on New York HR. We want to thank Talent Tech Labs for providing our platform for today. Steve Levy, who is showing the hot bagels. That's it?
That's it.
Unreal.
Yeah, that's it.
You had the bagel
oh my God.
on. Fantastic. I want to thank
we have our New York HR Bagel Cam.
New York HR Bagel Cam. Well, thank you again, Janine. That was great. Thank you for being on the show. We'll see you all next episode.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
And stop recording, Ryan. Well, that was fun. What do you think, True? Wild and crazy?
That, quite frankly, is probably one of the best times I've had doing anything for HR, really. Awesome. That was really awesome. You guys are onto something here.
Cool. Yeah, we hear that. We just have to get people on board, but we'll get there.
And we will. We'll get the word out, and we can also do a lot of cross content stuff.
I will.
Yeah,
I will definitely push this.
A couple of days I'll get the download. What I like to do is get the video and the audio. We're going to post the video up on YouTube and then the audio on SoundCloud. If you don't mind sharing, that would be fantastic. Tell your friends.
Absolutely.
And if you have any folks that want to join the show, they have to be New York HR recruiting folks. No one from outside the tri-state area, but if you know anyone, you can see. It's a fun. We're pretty gentle.
Yeah, who else? Cool. Who do we have scheduled coming up in the next couple of months?
We have the head of HR, Nick Sanchez of Namely, is up next.
Oh.
We also have.
That's because Anthony's an advisor.
What's that?
You're an advisor.
Yes, and we have some other folks. I forget, and we're going to have the head of SHRM NY or Horny HR NY.
Horny, yes. I think.
Who's the head of New York SHRM now? Oh, Janet Hoffman. Yeah.
She's a hoot. We know she's a hoot. She is body.
Yes, she is.
She is body.
All right, guys.
Who else? Hold on a second, yo. Victorio's going to be on. When's Victorio going to be on?
Victorio.
Million.
I was going to say yes.
Well, I don't know. Maybe later on in the year. I got to look at the schedule.
Yeah, because I know he is. True, and I know him really well. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've circled around Victoria. I haven't met him, but we're like sort of always missing each other, and I think he was at Razorfish at one point. So.
No, he wasn't. He just doesn't like the smell of Staten Island people.
All right. Janine, thank you so much.
Bye. Say hi to Marcel. Say hi to Marcel for me. Bye.
I will.
Thank you.